Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Kiki and this is Islands True Crime, where we talk about the unheard true crime stories from the Caribbean. Today we're talking about Toño Bicicleta or Tony Bicycle. When I was little, he was the man, the legend, the killer, who was loved and feared by all. What made him so scary? Why was he loved by many? Why he escaped justice for so long? Who took care of him? Let's find out his story and most importantly, his victim's story. Who was Toño Bicicleta? Francisco Antonio García López, also known as Toño Bicicleta or Tony Bicycle, was born on July 19, 1943, to his parents Esteban García Medina and Antonia López. Officially, he was born in Yauco, but some people say it was in Indiera Alta, Maricao. Others might say he was born in Lares, Puerto Rico. He got married to his first wife, Antonia Rivera, on the 60s, and they had 3 children together, Francisco Antonio, Maria Milagros, and Carmen Dolores. It's been said that he was cruel to Rivera's children from her previous marriage, to the point of throwing one of them off a cliff and then stitching the wounds that he sustained to his face without any anesthesia.
Cómo, de dónde venía la agresividad de él, el coraje que tenía, el coraje que podía tener por dentro. ¿Cómo te digo? Él era en sí diferente en muchos aspectos. En un momento podía estar riéndose muy alegre contigo, muy amable.
A psychiatrist once said that he suffered from a personality disorder and psychosis.
Y de un momento a otro estaba hecho una bestia.
Nevertheless, he was violent to everyone, but his own biological children.
Con nosotros era bien, pero pues como te digo, con los demás hermanos pues era diferente.
He had many relationships outside his marriage, one of them with Gloria Soto. She was his first victim. He took her life with a machete to her neck. He was arrested and sentenced for this crime to 185 years on 1968. But he escaped prison 2 years later. They looked for him everywhere, but they finally found him in Bayamon, Puerto Rico in 1974, and he had 77 accusations, including SA. He remarried in prison in 1976.
Una persona muy controversial, tal vez poco conocida, pero cuyo nombre ha sido muy bien difundida. Entre el pueblo se mitificó y entre pues, la prensa pues, se llegó a convertir en leyenda.
His new wife, Evelyn, was considered one of the pillars of the Baptist Church in Carolina, Puerto Rico, and she was at the prison ministering to all the prisoners. That's how they met, that's how they fell in love, and that's how they married. There are many newspapers detailing how he was caught. He never ran, he never hid. He just stayed there and be caught. Or so he wanted them to think. But when he realized that he was sentenced still to 185 years instead of 4, what have been said to him, he escaped in 1981. That same year, he took Gloria Despiau against her will in Arecibo, Puerto Rico. He kept her until 1984, when he left her behind during a police roundup. But shortly after, he took her again until her family rescued her. She was prosecuted by the government for this crime. 25 years later, she had to declare herself guilty of the crime that they put on her, even though she was a victim. He needed supplies, so he broke into the Maricao's mayor's home and stole a weapon, food, and some silver coins. Then he proceeded to take the lives of his uncle and stepfathers, as he despised people that cooperated with authorities. He went there in 1987 and took the life of his stepfather, Antonio Caraballo, and then tried to burn the house. Thankfully, his mother was able to escape. Then he went after his uncle, Pablo López Vargas, who was found by a neighbor in the most horrific scene. 1988 was the year that changed young Dahiana López's life. She had just arrived to Puerto Rico from the United States with her father to live here.
El momento que Toño me secuestra, yo era una niña de 13 años.
Dahiana was a normal teen who just turned 14 and wanted to spend time with her boyfriend at the town festival.
Salí para unas fiestas patronales, cual nunca llegué a ella.
Luis Enrique, her boyfriend, and her wanted to go to that town festival so much. They even asked her mother for permission. She signed a paper that they took to his mother. But his mother, Luis Enrique's mother, wasn't feeling very well. So they decided to stay and not go.
Luis Enrique me dice en un momento dado, vamos a ir a hablar.
In some places it says that they wanted to talk. In some other, that they wanted to spend some intimate time together. This is just a result of young love. They wanted to spend their time together, even if they couldn't go and have fun at the town festival.
Pues nos fuimos a hablar, sí, pero cogió la guagua prestada de su hermana.
They drove to a place in Sabana Grande called Lover's Lane, next to the Rio Guanajibo. There, young couples went to spend some time together. Little did they know that Tony was lurking in the dark and waiting for anyone that dared to park there. As soon as they parked, Tony approached their truck and ordered both of them to get down and take off their clothes. There, Dahiana's nightmare began. Tony took them over the hill next to the river. There, Luis Enrique tried to attack him with a rock, but Tony ended his life. He took Dahiana with him. Now she was his prisoner. He used chains to tie her feet. She stood there alone, dirty, hungry, scared. He left her for days at a time without food or a roof to cover herself. He ate her, and he made her his wife.
Completamente sorprendida, porque era una persona que jamás en mi vida yo había visto, y con el rencor y la mirada de odio que...
There is where Dahiana's and Tony Bicycle's story began. She was a girl, a little girl, just 14 years old, and he was a man. He took her against her will, ended up the life of her boyfriend. She wasn't even familiar with the surroundings. She has never lived in the island. She was just here. She just got here. But he made her take the path of the forest. They just walked and found places to hide. in the forest, different places, different neighborhoods, different towns. They just kept walking and hiding from police. Everywhere they went, she was tied with those chains to her feet until she had bruises and cuts into her ankles. He stood there and watched her become the person that he wanted her to be. He continued essaying her until the victim, just to get some mercy from him, started to show some affection just for him to treat her with more respect. That's what she wanted. It is said that Tony worked on coffee plantations and illegal plants, as well to make money to support himself and Dahiana. We would never know for sure what Tony did in the town of Lares, but what we know for sure is he was in the Bartolo neighborhood, which is a secluded, surrounded by forest place in Lares. We also know that some people loved, protected, and helped him, but nothing lasts forever. As it always happens, police found out he and Dahiana were there. Some of Tony's crimes aren't registered on his police records, including the ones against Dahiana López and Luis Enrique, her boyfriend. For 14 years, the police looked everywhere for Tony, especially the center of the island and all the mountains, forest there. Then they received a tip. Tony was located in Bartolo, a neighborhood in Lares, Puerto Rico. They were warned to walk backwards, so Tony thought they were leaving instead of getting close to him. Then it happened. A policeman laying on the ground, hiding, came face to face with Tony, or Toño Bicicleta.
Pero todos conocemos hoy dónde es Castañer, sabemos cuál es el espacio de Castañer, y pues ahora una se cuestiona, ¿de verdad que lo buscaban?
It all started when Lieutenant William Miro got a tip that Tony was in Bartolo. Lieutenant Miro was born and raised there. He knew the forest, so he sent his men to find Tony. They walked backwards. They hid. They looked. They found him, and they ended his life with a shot to his private parts. It has been said that it was a roundup of the police. It also has been said that someone betrayed him. It has lots of tales or mysteries around it. But the truth is, Tony was found. The police found him, and even though they thought Tony was going to attack them using a machete, it was them who put Tony down.
Hoy terminó la vida de clandestinaje del notorio prófugo Francisco Antonio García López, conocido como Toño Bicicleta. Este no pudo evadir un cerco policíaco que se le tendió en el sector Albona del barrio Bartolo de Lares, donde recogía café.
Tony was found on the Bartolo neighborhood on November 29, 1995 at 6:30 a.m. in the coffee farm Arbona. There, he picked coffee. He and Dahiana had a small makeshift home so they could live the life as husband and wife as he wanted them. When Tony came face to face with the police officer, Luis Merced, he screamed for Dahiana to run. She, in her panic, grabbed a shotgun and ran. Police stopped her by screaming at her and shooting her with BB guns. They proceeded to arrest her as Tony's accomplice instead of being Tony's victim.
Tras 14 años de estar evadido de la justicia, el legendario prófugo Francisco Antonio
The
García
news were everywhere. Everyone wanted to see the scene. Everyone wanted to see Tony. There were newspapers, there were reporters. It was everywhere in the news. I can remember that like it was yesterday. You could have seen that in every channel.
Lo que pasa es que yo tengo la información y yo me crié por estos campos y la información pues consideré que era buena y pasé a verificarla. Salimos desde la 1 de la mañana hasta aquí, esperamos, que da la casualidad, pues.
When the people found out what had happened to Tony, they all gathered in Arbona farm to get a closer look of Tony.
Yo no voy a usar emboscada. Aquí había una vigilancia, se detuvo un prófugo peligroso, armado, acusado de asesinato. El individuo se abalanzó contra los policías y tuvieron que usar el uso de la fuerza.
Dahiana was arrested and put in a cell in Castañer, Lares. She confirmed Tony was her captor and that he ended the life of Luis Enrique.
Negativas y lo que sufrí, he aprendido a superar, a analizar, a dar consejos a otras personas que necesitan ayuda como mujeres y hombres víctimas.
Dahiana was released but had to plead guilty to being Toño's accomplice and got 5 years probation.
Yo me pongo del lado de lo que yo fui. Yo fui correccional por muchos años y tengo vasto conocimiento de la ley. Mi papá fue uno de los delincuentes más grandes que tuvo Puerto Rico.
His son asked for forgiveness from the victims of his father, Tony, a very commendable action from his part. And Tony had a funeral with the people. Everyone went to see Tony one last time. He even had a flower bicycle made for his funeral and was put to rest in the Lares cemetery. And this concludes the story of one of the most notorious criminals of Puerto Rico, the story of Toño Bicicleta, or Tony Bicycle. It's one that every resident in the island knows. Most even still carry the fear of secluded places with them. Some, till this day, defend Tony. They say that he did not commit all the crimes the police adjudicated him, that they pinned all the unsolved crimes to Tony, so that way they would have a suspect. But what are your thoughts? Do you think Olga Despiau and Dahiana López should have been charged with being accomplices to Tony? Do you think they acted out of fear? Do you think they had Stockholm Syndrome? And finally, how do you see Tony? As the man, the legend, or the killer?